Bond lit a cigarette and settled himself in his chair. The long game was launched, and the sequence of these gestures and the reiteration of this subdued litany would continue until the end came and the players dispersed. Then the enigmatic cards would be burnt or defaced, a shroud would be draped over the table, and the grass-green baize battlefield would soak up the blood of its victims and refresh itself. The Greek, after taking a third card, could achieve no better than a 4 to the bank's 7. "Un banco de 2 millions," said the croupier. The players on Bond's left remained silent. "Banco," said Bond.
Who are you?
Bond. James Bond.
I think you're a sexist, misogynist dinosaur, a relic of the Cold War.
Shaken, but not stirred.
007 reporting for duty.
These are the 00 Files.
Welcome to the podcast of the 00 Files. My name is Don, and today we're going to continue with our thorough review of the book Casino Royale by Ian Fleming. Now, I won't be doing this by myself. My number 2 is very beautiful indeed, with black hair, blue eyes, and splendid protuberances. It's Tyyler! How are you doing, Tyyler?
I'm great, and I'm very glad you noticed all my protuberances today.
They're lovely, front and back. So, last week we went through chapters 1 till 9 of Casino Royale. How are you looking back on that?
I thoroughly enjoyed it. Yeah, I really liked it. Really going in depth into the book. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Good. Yeah, me too. I found new appreciation for the book, even though I already read it 10 times or something like that. And what I really liked was how Fleming managed to quickly suck you into the story and then explain things afterwards. That's something he also does in other books. And I think Bond is a very professional, very cool agent, not easily shaken or stirred. But he is, we already find out, a very misogynist male loner. Now, before we continue, I briefly want to go back to what we discussed last week, because yesterday evening, as a matter of fact, I received a very interesting book in the post. Now, that whole process also started about a week ago. I was having a good chat on Twitter with Matt Bunnell, who runs the amazing Twitter account, two actually, both Bond Maps and JB Unifax. I don't know if you know him.
No, I'm not really into Twitter, so.
Okay. Well, his first account, he describes in great detail all the Bond locations from the novels, so not from the films, which is quite nice. And with the second account, he relates the Fleming adventures of 007 in chronological order. And
so, was he able to tell you where Royale actually is, or
yeah, and
is he still looking for it on a map as well?
No, the interesting thing that he said was that it moved. Yeah, he said that it's somewhere else in Casino Royale and in Majesty's.
Aha.
Isn't it funny how a fictional town can move?
In Majesty's, it's near Nice, right?
And now it's close to Dieppe, and
yeah.
Those two are not close by. My French map skills are very poor. I'm sorry. But anyway, Matt, he puts a great amount of research into his tweets and blogs, and he pointed out this book to me that arrived yesterday in the post. It's written by John Griswold, who sadly passed away in 2016, and he was only 65. And his book is called Ian Fleming's James Bond, Annotations and Chronologies for Ian Fleming's Bond Stories. Whew, no, there's the title. And in his book, Griswold analyzes all the Flemings in immense detail. And when it arrived yesterday evening, I was really stunned by the package already. I didn't know what to expect, but the package was already very large. And then the book, it's just amazing. It's big, it's thick, it's like an encyclopedia. It'll take me months to get through that, but I'm really looking forward to it. Now, obviously, this book arrived too late to make any adjustments for today's recording. I have all my preparations already finalized, but I just want to go back to one detail that we discussed last week. It was about the failed bombing attempt at Royale, when Red Man and Blue Man blow themselves up with the 2 camera cases, and Bond has that lucky escape because he happens to be passing a tree trunk. Now, I don't know if it was you or me, but we were wondering if this is a story that Fleming came up with himself or if it was a true event. So last night I was just briefly leafing through John Griswold's Bible, and I came across this passage in this chapter on Casino Royale. Okay, I'm going to try and quote him here. Unfortunately, he doesn't have an audiobook version of his work. So here we go. Vesper Lind gave details about the incident that occurred in Chapter 6, Two Men in Straw Hats. Note, Fleming based this fictional event on an actual event. And now he quotes Fleming. I don't know exactly if my Fleming voice is up to par, but I'm going to give it a go. Far-fetched, you may say. In fact, this was the identical method used in the Russian attempt on von Pappen's life in Ankara in the middle of the war. On that occasion, the assassins were also Bulgars, and they were blown to nothing, while von Papen and Frau von Papen, walking from their house to the embassy, were only knocked down and bruised by the blast. And then Griswold continues, saying that Fleming's fictional account of Bond's near-death experience with the Bulgars was similar to the actual von Papen incident, but not identical. And then Griswold continues explaining what actually happened to von Papen. Now, you see, Tyler, I already love this book.
Yeah, this is going to take you months, but it's going to be well worth it, I guess.
He goes into such an amount of detail. I will definitely use this book for next week when we're going to analyze the last 9 chapters.
And I think Matt Gorley will be amazed by your Ian Fleming personification.
I think it will help if you are a native English speaker, though, but I'll give it my best, yeah. I was actually looking for the interview on YouTube, but couldn't find it. That would have been nice. So, before we continue to part 2 of our review, I want to ask you if you remember the very first time you read Casino Royale.
Wow, that's a long time ago. Also, the first time I read it in Dutch, at least the first few chapters, but I think I put it down after probably 3 or 4 chapters. I had read Thunderball, You Only Live Twice, also in Dutch. Before starting Casino Royale, but it took me quite a while to actually get around to reading it in English. So that was probably 15 years ago that I read it for the first time. Thoroughly enjoyed it. It was really nice to see where Bond was coming from, how he started his journey, how Fleming started his journey. So yeah, I couldn't get through it in Dutch.
Was it a bad translation or old-fashioned language? Or
old-fashioned language, and I think I was about 9 years old at the time. So
well, it doesn't help.
Might not have been the best book to read at the time.
It's interesting that you remember reading Thunderball. I think that was my first book. And then you read
You Only Live Twice.
And you skipped Majesties. That's funny.
Yeah, it's just because my mother had Thunderball and You Only Live Twice on her bookshelf. So it was just
random.
The first 2 that were on hand for me to grab.
Right. Now, I distinctly remember reading Casino Royale for the first time. It was the summer of 2001. I was 18 years old and I was backpacking through Scotland with 2 friends. And we were traveling from youth hostel to youth hostel. We started in Edinburgh and then we went to a different town, a different hostel each day. And in a bookstore in Edinburgh, I bought a paperback copy of Casino Royale, and I never read it before. But I had read other Flemings before, though. I don't know exactly how many or which ones, but I was familiar with his work in English, and I just saw that copy in the bookstore. I just had to have it. Now, one of our hostels was in Inverness. I don't know if you know that place in Scotland. It's already quite up there in the north. But from there, we went up even further north by train, just for one night, to a hostel, which was actually located in an old Scottish castle. And I can't remember the exact place. I was looking for it on the map, but I remembered the castle and walking up to it. It was so impressive. It had these huge walls as statues, and it was big and dark and medieval-like. So my friends I was traveling with, they always had the tendency of sleeping as long as possible in the mornings, but I'm always up early. And I distinctly remember lying in my bed in the Scottish castle reading Casino Royale for the first time. And that's just both a wonderful and also a haunting memory, because it was a strange place to be.
Yeah, I can imagine, but I can imagine that it stays with you just because of that.
Yeah, it does. It was great fun, and I'm glad we did it. A long time ago.
But you were already very much a Bond fan at that time, right? It wasn't...
Yeah, pretty much it never stopped. When I first encountered Bond, I was about 6 years old, and then, it's like a disease.
You never looked back?
No, but I remember struggling with the books in my teenage years, because I never read them in Dutch. I always wanted to read them in English. But my English wasn't that well, so I was struggling with it. But it also was an incentive to keep going and keep trying and rereading it. Yeah. Okay, let's move on.
All right.
I also found some interesting background information on Casino Royale on Wikipedia. Now, the sources that were used for this paragraph on the Wikipedia page are the biography Ian Fleming by Andrew Lycett, and he wrote that in 1996, and the book For Your Eyes Only by Ben McIntyre, which was published in 2008.
That's the little white with red book, right? It's...
Oh, you have it right there?
This one, right?
I think it is, yes.
Yeah, Ben McIntyre.
And do you have the Andrew Lycett book as well? It's massive.
No.
His biography.
No, and I'm also still wondering whether I will ever get around to reading the Pearson autobiography.
Yeah, there are
or
several
the
biographies of Fleming, yeah. They might be difficult to get through, I'm not sure.
Audible has it as an audiobook, so that's...
That might help, yeah. So I think they took some quotations from those books and they reposted it on Wikipedia, like you do in our internet age. And it says, Casino Royale was inspired by certain incidents that took place during Fleming's wartime career at the Naval Intelligence Division, or NID, or by events of which he was aware. Now, this I find very interesting. On a trip to Portugal, en route to the United States, Fleming and the NID director, his boss really, Admiral Godfrey, went to the Estoril Casino. Now, we know Estoril because that's where they recorded Majesties.
Oh, I especially know it from the Formula One race that used to be there. But
and that too, yeah. Now, because of Portugal's neutral status in the war, Estoril's population had been swelled by spies and agents from the warring regimes. And Fleming claimed that while he was there, he was cleaned out by a chief German agent at a table playing chemin de fer. So in a way, he was trying to do the operation that he has Bond doing, but he fails. And then Admiral Godfrey told a different story. He said that Fleming only played Portuguese businessmen and afterwards fantasized about playing against German agents. Now, what do you think of this?
Yeah, it's always nice how two stories can differ so much from each other. Fleming was single-handedly responsible for financing the German war effort, and on the other hand, you have his admiral who says, no, he only played some businessmen and some old ladies. I really like that. I think Fleming did have a vivid imagination.
Yeah.
So I'm not quite sure. Probably the truth is somewhere in the middle.
Well, that's a shame, isn't it? That we will never find out what actually happens. But I like the romanticized version. I mean, it's just...
Yeah, it reads better.
You have to have those stories. And then we have the perfect recreation of the story, how it should have gone in Casino Royale now. And it's funny how he placed the casino in France instead of Portugal. Because it could have used...
I'm not sure. I think it's also because doing the research in France was easier for him or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, doesn't really matter, I guess.
It was a lot closer to Dover, as we learn in the novel. So.
But what does that mean?
I don't know.
Why is that important?
Well, if you want to do some location research, then it might be easier to just travel.
Right. Was Fleming already living in Kent? Because he wrote it in Jamaica, but he also had a house in Kent, which is close to Dover, so easy to get to France.
Yeah, so maybe that was why. I don't know.
Okay.
Is this thing on? Okay. Hi, this is Don, and I'm breaking into the audio feed with a few additional remarks. I am currently editing this podcast and listening to Tyyler and myself talking about Royale. Now, since recording, I ran into a very comprehensive blog post written in September 2015 by Edward Biddulph, which is called Where is Royale? Edward describes how Fleming places the town near the mouth of the river Somme, which puts Royale in the Picardy region, and this is also implied by Fleming, describing the location as being before the flat coastline soars up from the beaches of southern Picardy to the Brittany cliffs, which run onto Le Havre. However, by the time Fleming wrote On Her Majesty's Secret Service, the fictional Royale had drifted north. Edward very cleverly explains this with the help of a Michelin signpost that Bond passes while he's driving. Edward then convincingly argues that the genuine coastal town of Trouville was probably the inspiration for Royale. That town even has a casino, built in 1912 by Alphonse Durville, and perhaps it has something of the Negresco Baroque of Casino Royale about it. Another inspiration for Royale is the town of Forges-les-Eaux, which is located inland and is, like Royale, a spa town. And it also has a casino. Now, Edward concludes his blog post by stating that Ian Fleming was very familiar with the places and geography of northern France, and it is no wonder that his writing is influenced with the memes of the region. Now, to me, this explains why the story is not set in Portugal. Now, if you're interested in the geography of fictional towns, I really recommend reading this entire blog post. It has maps and photos and links to other websites and everything. You can find the link in the show notes. All right, back to the original conversation.
Now, lastly, before we get to the book, have you seen the TV series, Fleming? The Man Who Would Be Bond in 2014?
No, couldn't get through it. And by the time I wanted to try again, Netflix removed it.
Oh, that's a shame. I still have it for you, though. If you want to watch it, I can get it to you.
I might give it another try. Yeah.
Yeah, it might actually be nice to go through them and also discuss them, but that's a whole other plan. Anyway, Rear Admiral John Godfrey there is played by Samuel West, who also read this short story collection For Your Eyes Only as an audiobook. And there is some general consensus that the character of M is heavily based on Admiral Godfrey, Fleming's Naval Intelligence Division director. Now, quite briefly, I'd just like to listen to a scene from that TV series. And it's a meeting between Fleming and Admiral Godfrey, very much like the M briefing scenes in the James Bond films. Of course, this is highly dramatized, but we still get a glimpse of what Fleming was doing in the war, planning, schemes, and dreaming up fantastical operations. So let's give that a listen, shall we?
What's wrong with you, Fleming? Are you trying to get us both sacked? You told Admiral Downer a pack of lies.
I didn't lie, I implied.
Don't chop logic with me. You still think it's a game?
War is a game, one we can't afford to lose. If I hadn't helped those refugees, we'd be looking at reports of a bloody massacre. Can't you see that?
What am I going to do with you?
I was hoping you'd ask.
Well?
Intelligence commandos. If the Germans have them, we need them too. We have to beat them at their own game.
Go on.
Well, their commandos go in and pull out whatever documents are left behind. But they send them in with the front line. So what if we went one better? Send our intelligence commandos in ahead. Way ahead. These aren't soldiers, these are spies. 30 men to start, more later if needed.
Who's going to run this unit?
I am.
Will it keep you out of trouble?
Almost certainly not.
It's a bloody good idea.
Thank you. Sir.
Thought you might like to know Churchill's given Darla an ultimatum. Hand over the French fleet or we bomb it at anchor. You have good instincts. Use them.
All right, what do you make of that?
He's such an adventurer, isn't he? He derives so much fun from the war and thinking of plans, and he really makes it an adventure. He's like an Indiana Jones of en la lettre.
Huh?
Almost.
I wonder how much of this is actually true, how things went. But there are so many stories about what happened. Maybe we should read some of those biographies.
Yeah, I'm usually not that interested in the writer behind my favorite books, but maybe in this case it might be a good idea because Fleming's life is so interwoven with that of Bond. It might be nice to see where it's all coming from.
Let's just put that on a list somewhere. Now we'll get to that sometime.
Sure.
I quite like this scene. At first I found Fleming to be very arrogant. I didn't like the sir at the end at first. It sounds very condescending. But, he's not Bond. He's Fleming. We don't know how it went. I don't know, the relationship that he had with Admiral Godfrey.
Yeah, from this little snippet, it's almost like they're good friends and just equal colleagues.
Yeah, instead of different ranks. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to delve into Fleming a bit more, but let's now delve back into the book, shall we?
Let's do that.
Okay,
Yes.
we ended last week with chapter 9, in which Bond and Vesper are having dinner, and Bond was explaining all the rules of the game baccarat. Now we're going to go through chapters 10 till 18 today, and I'm going to leave it to you to kick things off.
Okay, are you ready for some baccarat? Because we'll actually delve into the game very deeply right now. We'll start with chapter 10, the high table. Bond is really in the zone by the time he arrives at the casino. The staff knows exactly who he is, so he doesn't have to show his membership card. Vesper and Bond meet up with Felix Leiter, who asks Vesper to join him for a game of roulette. And we learn that 007 doesn't have any lucky numbers and that he only plays the even chances. Felix Leiter, however, will show Vesper how lucky number 17 can be for him. So he's totally into that nonsense of lucky numbers and talismans and things like that.
I love his quote there. It's like, watch number 17 obey my extrasensory perceptions. It's like,
yes,
he's quite funny. Yeah.
Yeah, Leiter is a great character in this book. I might even like him more than Mathis. Or Matisse.
Oh, there we go.
Again. So Bond is seated at number 6, which is almost dead opposite of Le Chiffre. And he settles into his chair, he gets out his lighter and a cigarette case, and prepares for a long night of gambling ahead. We get some information about the players who share the table with Bond. We have a wealthy Belgian, a distinguished but weak-looking lord and his wife, and a well-known Greek gambler. All the other seats are still vacant, so Bond informs with the chef de partie who else will be playing tonight. And we learn that an American film star, a Maharaja, a young Italian, and Mr. and Mrs. Dupont will join him at the table later. And we don't get too much interplay between all those characters during the game, just with Mr. and Mrs. Dupont somewhere in the next chapters. But it's nice to get a quick glimpse in who will be playing along with him.
I agree.
Tonight.
And Fleming really takes his time to describe the other players, even though it's not really relevant, but it's a couple of pages.
Yeah, but it sets up the night of gambling very well. So Le Chiffre arrives with, as Fleming calls it, the silence and economy of a big fish. Now I wonder which image popped into your head when you read that.
Just greasy-like, worming his way through. All of a sudden, he's there, but he's like the center of attention.
Yeah, I really had to think of a parrotfish when I read that for the first time. They are very gentle, almost gliding through the water. So that's the fish I imagined.
Bond had just finished his sketchy summing up of the players when Le Chiffre, with the silence and economy of movement of a big fish, came through the opening in the brass rail and, with a cold smile of welcome for the table, took his place directly opposite Bond in the banker's chair. With the same economy of movement, he cut the thick slab of cards which the croupier had placed on the table squarely between his blunt, relaxed hands. Then, as the croupier fitted the 6 packs with one swift, exact motion into the metal and wooden shoe, Le Chiffre said something quietly to him. "Messieurs, mesdames, les jeux sont faits, un banco de 500,000. And as the Greek at number 1 tapped the table in front of his fat pile of 100,000 plaques, le banco est fait.
So we start the game with a bank of 500,000 francs.
Yeah.
And in Baccarat, after every hand, the stakes double. So we go from 500,000 to 1,000,000 to 2 to 4, etc., etc.
Until you want to start over.
Until you want to start over, yes. And some hands are played during this chapter. Not much happens. And we end the chapter when Bond bancos a bank of 2 million francs. So in this chapter, the game is set up. We meet all the players that are with Bond at the table. We meet Le Chiffre, who still hasn't said anything. And he really sets the stage to start the game proper.
He takes his time. This man can write. I mean, this whole action of looking at your cards, it takes like 5 seconds, 10 seconds. But Fleming describes it in a whole page. I mean, he uses...
Yeah, but the funny thing is, in the next 2 chapters, we go through that game in a hurry. So he really took his time to set it up. But the climax of the Baccarat game is over before you know it.
That's true. That's true. It's funny. But we'll get to that in this episode even, to those chapters. But here, he's so detailed and writing so visually. I really love it.
With his flat wooden spatula like a long bricklayer's trowel, the croupier delicately lifted up the Greek's 2 cards and dropped them with a quick movement an extra few inches to the right, so that they lay just before the Greek's pale, hairy hands, which lay inert, like 2 watchful pink crabs on the table. The 2 pink crabs scuttled out together, and the Greek gathered the cards into his wide left hand and cautiously bent his head so that he could see, in the shadow made by his cupped hand, the value of the bottom of the 2 cards. Then he slowly inserted the forefinger of his right hand and slipped the bottom card slightly sideways so that the value of the top card was also just perceptible. His face was quite impassive. He flattened out his left hand on the table and then withdrew it, leaving the 2 pink cards face down before him, their secret unrevealed. Then he lifted his head and looked Le Chiffre in the eye. "No," said the Greek flatly.
Now, in my preparations, I put an analysis in here from the website. What was the website? Let me check. Course Hero Book Analysis. It's a website. I'm going to put it in the show notes as well. And let me just read that out. It says, in another writer's hands, the scenes at the baccarat table could come across as boring. After all, the only real action is the flipping of cards and the exchanging of plucks or chips. Fleming, however, has a gift for turning otherwise boring activities into tense, high-stakes events through the use of imagery. His similes and metaphors transform the Greek's hands, for example, into 2 watchful pink crabs, which scuttle out together to gather the proffered cards. The table on which they play is a grass-green base battlefield that will soak up the blood of its victims and refresh itself. Now, these lush descriptions of even the most basic objects lend an air of drama to a rather uneventful scene. Do you agree with that?
Yes, but you can definitely see that Ian Fleming has never been to a Circus Casino in Las Vegas, because that's not the way it goes on there. No, but it's great, and going a bit ahead towards the novel Moonraker. I don't know how to play bridge.
No.
I probably will never play bridge until I'm 75 years old. But the way he describes that game at Blades with tracks, it's such an interesting way of describing it. And it's really an edge of your seat scene.
Exactly. I even like his golf chapters in Goldfinger. It's amazing. But it is just a card game, yeah.
Yeah, and in the case with Baccarat, it's almost, might as well flip a coin, because it's really a 50-50 game. There's much strategy involved, or just see who has the better cards.
Yeah. So 2 things I'd like to point out that struck me. One is that Bond and Vesper leave the hotel at the beginning of the chapter, and they drive over in the Bentley. But wasn't this like 10 yards, the casino from the hotel?
Yeah, but he needs it later.
Yeah, but he doesn't know that yet.
No, but I don't know. He probably
maybe he wants to
he's a
show
big fan
off.
of the car.
Yeah, impress Vesper a bit. See what I'm driving here. Lots of power. Maybe he needs to compensate for something. I don't know.
I really like the start with Felix Leiter. Yeah. Like I said, he almost rebuffs him for saying something silly like lucky numbers and things like that. There's no, I'm all business now. Go and play roulette.
He's not having any fun with his Bond.
No, he takes his gambling very seriously.
And also the end of the chapter. This is like a perfect ending. You know, Le Chiffre wins 2 coups, and he has a bank of 2 million francs, and everybody stays silent. And then it's Bond's turn, and it just says one word: Banco. And that's the end of the chapter. I mean, come on, you can't stop there. Yeah. I have to keep reading.
No, I put it in my notes as well. We've got a couple of those a couple of those moments. Like, okay, I'm not going to sleep after this chapter, so I might as well read another
exactly.
one.
Yeah. Banco. There we go. Chapter 11. Moment of truth. Le Chiffre looks at Bond, and the whites of his eyes, all round the irises, lending him something impassive and dull-like gaze. And he plays a bit for time, and he uses the inhaler, and he slaps the shoe, and he fingers out 4 cards. Now, I looked this up at the website, the analysis, about benzodrine. It's some sort of drug, right? It's some sort of...
It's like speed.
Yeah, there you go. The website says this. Benzodrine is an amphetamine formerly used to treat nasal and bronchial congestion, created in 1928, which is not that long before this book actually was published. It quickly...
25 years.
But it's not that long. Now it's almost a century ago, but it quickly became popular for its less medicinal use as an artificial stimulant. Many artists and writers depended on it for a jolt of creativity, but it was addictive and dangerous to one's health. Do you think Fleming might have used this?
Bond uses it a lot along the
Yeah, he
novels,
does.
so
Yeah.
I think he did as well.
Yeah, maybe.
And wasn't it also something that they gave to soldiers before they went into battle?
I have no idea.
To give them a bit of an extra edge?
Could be. It's like drinking Red Bull, right? But then worse.
More or less. Probably a bit stronger.
Okay, good. Let me continue. Le Chiffre's usage of it points to probable fatigue and his desire to remain mentally sharp during the game. And it's also a metaphorical slap in Bond's face. Bond finds Le Chiffre's snorting of the benzodrine before dealing the cards an offensive pantomime for which there is no place in a high-stakes, gentlemanly game. And then Le Chiffre rudely takes a hit of the drug without apology or embarrassment, and Bond finds it offensive. Now, as a reader, I really detest Le Chiffre now, don't you?
I believe Mrs. Dupont also says something about it, like, "Oh, that's gruesome." But on the other hand, 2 novels later in Moonraker, he takes a couple of sniffs of benzodrine with his champagne.
He does.
Bond himself. So I don't think too much of it.
Okay.
I think it was more accepted during that time to walk around bouncing on speed. Probably.
Oh, the more you know. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're about to start. Bond holds the gaze of Le Chiffre, and he sums him up like a minotaur. That's the kind of boar-like creature from the Greek mythology, like you mentioned last week. And casually, he slips a packet of notes onto the table, gesturing he's both relaxed and confident and wealthy. And the other players sense the tension between the 2 gamblers. Now, this is already great.
I like it how he just slaps his complete bankroll on the table.
Very
like,
nonchalant.
take as just need and give me back the rest. And
yeah.
Really relaxed.
And you can feel some sort of electricity. And it's like, it's written in slow motion. Bond has an unbeatable 9. And then all the players before him, they are jealous because they said that, well, we should have taken this bank, but they were stupid enough to stay silent. But Bond is not showing any emotions. He's pleased with the success of his first coup and with the outcome of the silent clash of wills across the table, but he's not showing it. And then while he's playing, Bond checks out also Le Chiffre's gunmen, and he says that one of them is tall, wooden, and grey. It's a wonderful description, just 3 words, and you already can picture the guy. And the other is short, very dark, and hairy. I don't want to be him. He seems to be a cripple, the second one, because he has a cane, and he probably has special permission to be allowed a walking stick into the casino. Now, is that still the case? Do you still need special permission for...
No, nowadays you see people with oxygen tanks there, so...
It was very strict back then.
Probably in France. I'm not quite sure.
Or maybe just for a high stakes game.
Yeah, maybe just in the salon privé. I don't know.
Yeah. So, well, the game continues uneventfully, Fleming writes. And I always am thinking then, what happens? Does nothing happen? Do they play 1 hand, 10 hands? I don't know. But the game just continues uneventfully. And we find out that Le Chiffre, unbeknownst to Bond, had already lost quite heavily earlier that afternoon, and he only has 10 million francs left.
Yeah.
And Bond, on the other hand, now has a capital of 28 million. So he's nearly there.
Yeah, so if everybody just stopped playing right now, Le Chiffre would be in a lot of trouble as well.
Yeah, but that's the thing.
Because he needs something like 50 million?
Yeah, something like that.
Right?
But you don't know how much he has.
No, true.
So,
True.
Bond just wants to make sure that he's beaten and cleaned out completely. Now it's 1 a.m. in the morning, and then the play suddenly alters. The players before Bond lose consecutively, and a bank of 4 million francs is put to Bond. And then Bond loses. And he follows up the bank of 8 million francs again, and he loses again. So in just 2 coups, Bond has lost 12 million francs. Oops.
Yes. Oops.
On the flip of a coin, like you said. And he has just 16 million left, exactly the amount of the next bank. And he follows. It's like Sweevy. There's no hint in his movements that this is his last stake. He looks at Vesper. He looks at Felix. He's seeking assurance, maybe. What's going on? Do you think Felix understands what's going on?
Yeah, probably, but they're just standing there smiling, right? And he's a bit flustered about
Yeah,
that.
I think Vesper doesn't have any idea what's going on, and Bond knows that she doesn't have any idea.
Or Vesper is thinking, hey, this is going well.
For
Le Chiffre.
yeah. Luckily, we don't get Felix here in a Matty-like voice. Bond now has to go all in.
No, that's a good thing, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe in a Texan drawl would be nice. Yeah, I'm not going to try that one. Bond gets 2 cards. It's the King of Hearts and the Ace of Spades. That gives him a total of 1 point. That's not much. He asks for another card, and he's keeping all emotion out of his voice. Now, he doesn't know this, I think, but we as a reader know that the Chiffre has a total of 5 points. So Bond receives his 3rd card, and that's a 5. So he has a total of 6 points. And the Chiffre must draw. But how does Le Chiffre know this?
Well, he knows Bond has a
0,
or 3, 1, 2, 3, or 4.
Or 5. You can also draw on a 5.
Or 5, like we learned, the odds favor standing pat on a 5,
Yeah.
if you play the odds.
So probably if Bond asks for another card and it's a 5, it means he quite improved his hand. Coming closer to...
Yeah, he probably improved his hand to a 5, to at least a 5.
Yeah,
and
maybe higher.
6,
Yeah.
7, 9. Yeah.
So Le Chiffre has 5 points, and he knows he must draw and try to improve with a 1, a 2, a 3, or a 4. If he draws anything else, he will be defeated.
The odds were on Bond's side, but now it was Le Chiffre who looked across into Bond's eyes and hardly glanced at the card as he flicked it face upwards on the table. It was, unnecessarily, the best, a 4, giving the bank a count of 9. He had won, almost slowing up. Bond was beaten and cleaned out.
What an ending to a chapter! Oh my god! Again, Bond is beaten and cleaned out.
Yeah, in about 5 hands, they they handed him half of the money that he needs. What a great plan is this! Now, and that's why I like that they changed the game from baccarat to poker
In the film, yeah.
in the movie. Yeah, because that's more of a skill game. So
I don't know, is that? That's interesting, yeah.
yeah, so poker is really a game that you can become good at, while baccarat is more like it's more gambling.
Yeah, luck more has to do with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But this, I can't stop. We have to go on. Chapter 12.
Again, a chapter that's not going to be the last chapter of the day before you go to sleep. So we continue to chapter 12, the Deadly Tube. Well, Bond is cleaned out. He's contemplating his life, what to do next. Also, what the response will be from M and his colleagues and from Vesper. And, well, he's really down and out, actually. And all of a sudden, an envelope is pushed into his hands. And it's a present from Felix Leiter, Marshal 8. 32 million francs. So that's exactly the amount he needs to sweepy Le Chiffre's bank of 32 million. And this creates a buzz around the casino. It's incredibly high stakes, probably the highest stakes ever played for. So people really perk up and come and have a look to see what's happening at the baccarat table.
Un banco de 32 millions. The croupier's voice rang out. A silence built itself up round the table. Un banco de 32 millions. In a louder, prouder voice, the chef de partie took up the cry, hoping to draw big money away from the neighbouring chemin de fer tables. Besides, this was wonderful publicity. The stake had only once been reached in the history of baccarat, at Deauville in 1950. The rival Casino de la Forêt at Le Touquet had never got near it. It was then that Bond leant slightly forward. Suivi, he said quietly.
So Bond sweepies Le Chiffre, getting ready to play for the high stakes, and suddenly one of Le Chiffre's bodyguards appears behind Bond. It's not the tall, grey, skinny one, but I believe it's the small, hairy one with his cane.
Yeah, with the cane, yeah.
And he pushes his cane into 007's back. He tells Bond that his cane is also a concealed gun and that he is ready to kill Bond if he doesn't withdraw his bet within the next 10 seconds. And we get this very, very tense scene where Bond is looking around trying to catch someone's eyes, trying to signal to someone that something is going on, while the gunman is quietly whispering in his ear, 1, 2, 3. And I love it. Every count is interwoven with the things that are happening at the table and at the casino. So Le Chiffre knows what's going on, and he's enjoying it all immensely. He's looking around, and he's really happy that his plan is working and that Bond will withdraw his bet or die. Any of the two outcomes would be good.
It's kind of like the smirk he gives in the film as soon as he sees that Bond is being poisoned.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that, yeah. Whew. So what happens?
So all of a sudden Bond heaves backwards in his chair so that the gunman loses his grip on the gun, and Bond topples over into the crowd. He finds out that the gunman has already vanished, but he dropped his cane. So Bond excuses himself, and he blames it all on the heat and the excitement and the long gambling that he's been doing. And everybody is really understanding of that. Yeah, of course, it's high stakes and it's a busy night, and we'll get you another chair, no problem at all. So he tells the huissier to give the cane to Felix Leiter, so that Felix Leiter can see what was the reason that Bond went through all these shenanigans. So Bond gets back on his chair. He taps the green cloth in front of him to signify that he's ready to continue playing. And I love the descriptive power of Fleming in this scene. You really, again, edge of your seat writing. Bond feels helpless, and there are so many people around, but nobody knows what's happening. And before you know it, he might have been killed.
Yeah, it's crazy. First time I read this, I had no idea what was going on when he pushes himself backwards with his chair. But I can now completely picture it happening when you're just sitting there.
Yeah.
And you with all your strength.
Yeah, he goes head over heels.
Yeah. And what I find funny is that back in that time, it was really something, it was silly, but you also kind of lose face with that. Or it's kind of like people would look down on that.
Yeah.
I don't know how to describe it properly, but...
Yeah, he makes a fool of himself.
But who cares?
He saves his own life, but for other people, he just makes a fool of himself. He can't stand the heat. He can't stand the pressure and the excitement.
Now, at the beginning, I had to look this up. I remember it from my history class in high school. Martial aid. Did you get that reference?
Yeah, it was the payments of the Americans on to the Allied forces.
Yeah, exactly.
And also to the French, the Dutch, and the Belgians. Yeah.
So when Felix gives Bond the note with the thick envelope of 32 million francs, he writes down Martial aid. And Martial aid was also the American Marshall Plan during 1948 and 1951. So that's like 3-4 years. The US sent $13 billion. That's a lot of money. Financial aid to Europe. And it was named after George Marshall, the US Secretary of State in that time. Now, in the analysis on the website, it says that Leiter's allusion illustrates the nature of the relationship between the US and Britain during the early years of the Cold War, at least from the superior British point of view. The US funds the cause, and the British, they handle the strategy and the skill.
Yeah.
So what does that tell you?
Yeah, we get this in From Russia with Love as well, right? Yeah, the Americans just throw money at it. You can't sow 1 million potatoes without reaping at least one plant, something like that. But yeah, the Americans solve everything with throwing more money at it, and the skill and the strategy is thought up by the British. Of course, they are the best.
They're superior,
yeah.
He really was a boss, that Fleming. But
maybe just a bit chauvinistic, but aren't we all?
Well, yes, maybe we are. Yeah. Do you have anything else on this chapter? I have a few points to make on the ending, but
okay. Now let's go ahead.
Yeah. So, like the surprise explosion early in the day, Bond's second brush with death occurs in a public place. So first he was out, and now he's in the casino. There are dozens of onlookers, including Leiter and Vesper. They are even mere feet away from Bond when the Corsican gunman threatens his life. And this scene highlights some of Bond's more notable character traits. Now, this is not something that I wrote down, but I'm reading here from the analysis website. It says that Bond is more attuned to danger than anyone else in the room. Time and time again, he sees threats others overlook. But I don't really agree with this, because Bond didn't notice the bomb or the hidden gun in the cane. What do you think?
Oh, he notices the gun by the time he gets it shoved in his back.
And he is being told it is a gun.
And he notices the bomb by the time it's raining flesh. So no, I don't really think that he's highly attuned to the danger that he's in.
No. Okay. Second one. Bond can only rely on himself. He has a partner and 2 allies in the same room, but none of them are paying attention to his personal safety. They assume the only risks in the casino involve money, and they are literally looking the other way when the Corsican whispers in Bond's ear. No matter how many people are on his side, Bond must operate as if he's on his own. Do you agree with that?
More or less.
Mm-hmm.
In the end, we're all alone on this world. To get into some philosophy, no, but Bond wouldn't want it any other way. I mean, at the beginning of the book, he clearly states, why did they send me someone? I might as well work alone. I prefer working alone. So I'm not really sure if he would like it if somebody else held his hand.
He does like it that Matti is there, though. He does appreciate
but more in the friendship kind of way.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, we also read that Bond is a loner. He's the best secret agent there is. Now, for me personally, this is a given. You know, he wants to be alone. I don't know how you feel about that. But I remember in the film Spectre, when, you know that scene when Moneypenny and Q go to M in the restaurant to tell him about Bond's whereabouts? And M makes a point of saying that Bond is on his own, because if they track him, then C could also track him with the smart blood or something. And then Moneypenny and Q are like, oh no, that's so harsh. But I didn't get that vibe at all. I mean, it's always like that. Bond is used to working like that. That's how it should be, I think.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, that's why I don't like it when in Skyfall he walks around with an earpiece for half of the movie.
Yeah. Oh, okay. And lastly, Bond is willing to risk his life for the mission. Bond could have retracted the bet as the gunman instructed, but he chose to carry on. Now, I find this a strong and valid point. Bond is dedicated for some reason. And we will also see this later on when he's finally captured by Le Chiffre. I don't know exactly what drives him, though. Why is he so motivated, so dedicated to Queen and Country?
Yeah, well, he could have easily started over. I mean, he could have started at another bank of $500,000 and play his way up from there.
Yeah.
But he chose to, to have it hang on the flip of a coin for the full 32 million. I'm not really sure whether he's risking his life, because he had a few seconds left to withdraw his bet.
But as soon as you throw yourself back, you don't know exactly what's going to happen. The gunman might even shoot you.
Yeah, true.
So it takes a gamble. All the time he gambles with his life. And like you say, he doesn't decide to start over with a bank of $500,000, but he follows up the bank of 32 million francs.
Yeah.
So he's given a fortune, and then on the flip of a coin, he might as well lose it again.
Yeah.
But he's going to take that bet.
Yeah.
Okay. Chapter 13.
Chapter 13.
With the excellent title, A Whisper of Love, A Whisper of Hate.
Which still might be a great title for the next movie. At least half of it, like A Whisper of Love or A Whisper of Hate. One of the two.
By the time this comes out, we probably know the title of the next film. Probably cut this out.
Bond 26.
So, the game begins with a bank of 32 million francs. Here we go. We get a bit more of Le Chiffre's filthy habits, which is always nice.
Le Chiffre hit the shoe with a flat-handed slap that made it rattle. As an afterthought, he took out his Benzedrine inhaler and sucked the vapour up his nose. "Filthy brute," said Mrs. Dupont on Bond's left.
Oh, you gotta love the evil bastard, don't you?
Yeah.
So, it's 2 a.m., there's a thick crowd, and Bond knows he only has one chance. The cards mustn't fail him. The 2 cards are being dealt extremely slowly. Le Chiffre is watching like an octopus under a rock. And Bond looks at his 2 cards, and there are 2 red queens. They looked roguishly back at him from the shadows. They were the worst. They were nothing. 0. Baccarat. Oh, this is horrible. So, Bond asks for a card, and Le Chiffre turns his cards over, and he has a count of 3.
Bond softly exhaled a cloud of tobacco smoke. He still had a chance. Now he was really faced with the moment of truth. Le Chiffre slapped the shoe, slipped out a card, Bond's fate, and slowly turned it face up. It was a 9, a wonderful 9 of hearts, the card known in gypsy magic as a whisper of love, a whisper of hate, the card that meant almost certain victory for Bond.
Now, I want to read out a part of the analysis of this part. It's about the title of the chapter. As indicated in the text, a whisper of love, a whisper of hate, comes from gypsy or Roma folklore. And the Roma, they are known for their understanding of the mythic arts, including the interpretation of playing cards. The 9 of hearts Bond draws is often thought to symbolize success or satisfaction. In northern England, where many Roma live, they often use popular rhymes to tell fortunes when drawing a single card from the deck. It's kind of like reading tarot cards, isn't it? I mean, like he does with the solitaire. Now, the 9 of hearts rhyme in full is a whisper of love, a whisper of hate, tie a silk thread to the garden gate. Now, Bond interprets the 9 as a sign of good luck, but he's overlooking the negative aspect of the rhyme. Something very bad is going to come out of his success at the baccarat table. So the rhyme, in a way, foreshadows the conclusion of the story, where Bond's love for Vesper turns to hate. Now, that's some deep analysis. Do you think Fleming thought of all that?
Wow, yeah, he's really clutching at straws, isn't he?
You think so?
Maybe just a bit. But I like the effort that he put in to writing this analysis, really. But yeah, might be a bit much. But in the end, I like the effort he put into it.
I find it interesting that if you talk about rhymes like that, I don't know how well known they would have been. If they are common sense to the people back then, part of the culture, and they understand what's being meant.
No.
I'm not sure. It's something that we don't have now, so we can't experience that. But I think it's always nice to read into the background. And whether or not it's true, it makes sense as well, even if Fleming didn't put all that thought into it. But I just found it very interesting, yeah. So, Bond draws a 9, a wonderful 9, and the tension relief is so great after this paragraph. And the Chiffre doesn't know what to do. And I love this. Bond is not helping him. He just lets him sweat it out. He's not going to offer any help. Fleming describes that in a friendly game. He might have shown his hand. Mm-hmm. But now, I mean, so the Chiffre is sweating profusely. A hideous man. And finally he decides to take a card. It's going to be so difficult if the other one draws a 9. That almost always decreases your points.
Yeah, you're probably looking at a 3 or lower. So, yeah.
Well, the Chiffre has all the luck in the world. He decides to take a card, and he gets a 5. So he has a total of 8.
Yeah.
And he is so happy. He grins wolfishly. He thinks he must have won. And there was not a man at the table, Fleming writes, who did not believe Bond was defeated.
And then Bond slow rolls Le Chiffre.
No, he doesn't. Oh, this is wonderful. Bond doesn't even do anything. The croupier's spatula, he turns over Bond's cards. Et le neuf. Oh my dear God. That's just... Oh,
it's bad
I
etiquette,
love this.
But it's great for the novel.
Why is it bad etiquette?
Well, it's like when you have the winning hand in poker and you give the other player the idea at the end of the hand, and you give the other player the idea that he has won, and then slowly turn over the winning hand.
But Bond doesn't do it. It's the croupier.
Yeah, but he could have done it
himself.
Yeah, himself or straight.
That would have been better?
Well, no, it works for this novel, but it's bad etiquette in card playing. It's like you said, if it's a friendly game, then you wouldn't do this because.
Okay, right, I see. That's interesting.
Some people get really worked up if you slow roll them in poker.
Oh, I can imagine they do. Yeah. It's very important.
Yeah.
This is no fun. This is hard work.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I love it, of course. Bond has to win in the end because, well, he's Bond, but it plays out very, very well.
Yeah, and he now has 64 million francs. And Le Chiffre throws his remaining money on the table. All he has left, 10 million francs. And Bond thinks this is the kill.
Yep.
This is the last of his reserve. This is where Bond was himself an hour ago. Now, question mark. An hour ago, they played one game.
Yeah, they had
what happened to the time
for him, and well, yeah.
What did they do all the time?
Like you said somewhere before, that they really deal the cards in slow motion. Well, it took almost an hour. So.
Yeah.
Apparently.
And this is what you said at the beginning. This final game is described very quickly.
Yeah.
This is the last game. Bond easily wins. Le Chiffre is finished.
Yeah, in two chapters, he loses all his money and he wins all the money.
Yeah, very quick.
Yeah.
So Le Chiffre stands up, slowly, without a word. He hasn't spoken yet. He brushed past the players to the break in the rail. He unhooked the velvet-covered chain and he let it fall. And the spectators opened a way for him. And they looked at him curiously and rather fearfully, as if he carried the smell of death on him. And then he vanished from Bond's sight. That's right. And you were right, Tyler. I remember during the film review that Le Chiffre doesn't speak a word. He's an excellent villain.
Yeah, he's very easy to hate. He's grotesque and he slaps the shoe and he sniffs his Benzedrine and he's delightfully evil. It's something that I say quite often about Bond villains, but I think it works really well with this one.
Yeah.
And he gets worse as we continue.
Oh, yes, he does.
I mean,
he gets even
for now
worse.
he's just a bad-mannered card player, but oh my God, are we in for a treat?
Well, Bond is definitely on a high. He tosses the chef de partie a plaque of 100,000 francs. I did some calculations, about 2,500 euros or dollars as a tip. That's not bad.
It's not too shabby, but...
It's not bad. I wouldn't mind.
No.
It's 2:30 a.m. Do you think he might be able to sleep? He decides to meet up with Vesper and Leiter. And Bond pays back Leiter, like you should, very good.
Yep.
And then he takes a check for the remaining 40 million francs. That's what he has won, what is left. Bond and Leiter briefly talk about the game and the assassination attempt. And Leiter shows Bond the .45 bullet that was in the walking stick gun. And then all of a sudden Bond just wants to go back to the hotel and put away the check.
So let's jump ahead quickly. So Bond returns the money to Leiter and he keeps 40 million for himself. So if Le Chiffre's plan would work and he would find the check, then he's still short about 10 million francs, right?
That's not too bad, though.
Well, I don't think Smersh would like it.
No.
It's better than
Smersh,
nothing, of course, but he's still short.
Even if he has 40 million and Smersh catches up with them, they would assassinate him.
I think so, yeah.
Even if he would have the full 50 million, they'd probably still assassinate him. Because he is unreliable.
Yeah.
They sent the assassin a long time ago. Long before this poker game or the baccarat game.
That's true, yeah. Yeah, good point.
Being played. Yeah. He's toast anyway.
He's dead anyway.
Yeah.
Poor guy.
Yeah. So, before Le Chiffre might have any ideas, Bonds decide to hide the check and then celebrate. And he invites Vesper for some champagne. Leiter takes the hint. I like that. I'll go away. He excuses himself. And then Bond is back at the hotel. He's happy. He's by himself. I can completely relate to that. Just some nice, quiet time for yourself. Let all the energy fall from you. And he freshens up. And he wonders what Le Chiffre might be up to. Maybe he's already trying to escape. Maybe he's trying to come for Bond. But Bond also suspects that Smersh is after him now. And then, I had some difficulty reading this. Bond then fantasizes about ravaging Vesper. He's hungry for her body. And it appears she does not have any say in the matter.
Fleming being Fleming.
Yeah, oh well.
No, I love it that they don't try to arrest Le Chiffre or anything like they do in the movie. They just let Smersh have him.
Yeah.
They throw him to the wolves.
And it doesn't work in the film either, because Leiter was supposed to pick up Le Chiffre, but he doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. It makes no sense, and it makes a lot more sense here. They just, all right, so he's toast.
Finished.
Yeah. Let's Smersh have him, and he'll probably be dead before dawn.
Yeah. But first, Bond has to hide the check.
Yes.
Now, when you read it, you don't really know what he's doing. Yeah, you know that he's at his hotel room at the door, and he's using a screwdriver, and he's happy with his handiwork.
Yeah.
And he locks his door, and he walks out of the hotel into the moonlight. But you don't actually know what he did.
I like that.
Now, did you have any idea?
I don't know. I've read this book so many times that I don't really remember what I thought the first time.
That's true, but I remember when at the end we finally find out where he hid the check. I found it so clever.
Yeah, it's a really, really clever way of hiding the check. And also because somewhere along the way, Le Chiffre tells him that they went through his room with a fine-tooth comb and they couldn't find anything, and they probably destroyed the entire room like a rock star would on a tour. But they can't find it, so where is it?
No.
And I like the way that he explains it to Mathis later on. Like,
But Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Mati. Yes.
That's okay.
I like it
That's
how
okay,
he explains it to Mati, that even the British can learn something to the clever French. But we won't spoil it.
Yeah.
Spoil where he hides it.
No, not yet. That's for the final part
Yeah.
next week. Yeah. Finally, to round up this chapter, final analysis. This is an instance where Bond's libido overrules his better judgment. I think as a man, I can say we've all been there. He's so eager to bed Vesper. He brushes off Leiter's caution that Le Chiffre may be back for revenge. And he decides that hiding the check is enough to keep him and Vesper safe. Now, as in the beginning of the mission, Bond underestimates his opponent. I found this quite a valid point. I can imagine Bond is feeling very ecstatic, but he's also really careless.
Yeah, and it comes back to bite him in the rear end later on, and he even beats himself up for it later on.
Yeah.
He's like,
yeah, he does.
Well, I've been drinking champagne and fantasizing about Vesper, and here I am in the backseat of a car with my hands tied.
Now, recently I reread the short story From a View to a Kill, and it starts with Bond sitting on a terrace in Paris, and all he's thinking about is, what am I going to eat? And who am I going to sleep with?
Yeah.
That's pretty much all he thinks about.
And she'll probably smell like garlic, and her hair is coarse and straw-like.
Yeah, but it tells you something about what goes on in a man's mind, or Fleming's mind, or Bond's mind.
Probably, yeah.
Careless, yeah. We know what C stands for.
Yes.
Okay.
Ready for chapter 14?
Chapter 14. Definitely.
Chapter 14, La Vie en Rose. So, Bond is energized again after his long night of gambling, and he picks up Vesper at the casino and has to restrain himself from getting some chips from the cashier to gamble a bit more. And I like that. I like how he says it would be a slap in the face of all the luck that he had tonight to now go on to the roulette table and just splash around and play in maximums again. And I like that. He's like, okay, I had my share for tonight. I had my luck for tonight. It wouldn't matter if I would win or lose because I already had so much luck. Well, the high of the gamble has already been achieved. So instead, he takes Vesper to a nightclub where they sit and drink champagne. Lots and lots of it. And Bond had expected Vesper to be cheery and upbeat. However, she seems very tense, nervously smoking her cigarette, tapping it into the ashtray, even though there's no ash on it. And Bond gets a bit frustrated with her.
Yes.
But he also accepts her reserved composure, thinking that it's probably because of the way he treated her earlier that day. Because he was also very reserved towards her, rebuffed her when she sought some personal contact with him. So he, in the beginning, he really thinks that's probably because of that. But along the way, he gets really frustrated with her.
It sounds like an awful dinner as well. The poor guy just wants to have rough sex with her, but he's really frustrated.
Yeah, he orders some scrambled eggs, and by the time they arrive, you need the proteins. Hey, come on. If you're planning on a long night with Vesper, you might as well get some proteins in you. Well, they talk a bit about the night so far, that Leiter and Vesper had seen the gunman, but hadn't expected anything to happen inside the casino, just like you said. They didn't figure that anything would happen inside the casino. There would have been any danger there. Like I said, by the time the scrambled eggs arrive, Vesper is handed a note by the hotel staff, and she claims it's from Mati, and she walks away to meet him outside. And Bond is a bit surprised in the beginning, and a bit disappointed that Mati didn't want to meet them in the nightclub. And all of a sudden, Bond smells a rat, because there's no way that Mati would handle something like this way. He would probably invite Bond and Vesper to join him at the bar, meet him at the nightclub or whatever, but he wouldn't write a note to meet Vesper alone. So Bond quickly pays the bill, doesn't wait for the change, and he runs out just in time to see Vesper get abducted. Bond runs to the place where the car was a second before and finds Vesper's handbag. Like you said, the drinks in the nightclub doesn't sound like a cheery time.
No.
He might as well have said, like okay, this isn't working out. Let's go upstairs and let's go our own way. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, this really sounds like an awful dinner, especially he is on a high, he is ready to celebrate. All he wants to do is share his enthusiasm, but then imagine sitting across a table from someone who's just perfunctorily and doesn't want to open up or communicate. Oh, it seems horrible. Yeah.
She sipped at her champagne and rarely glanced at Bond. She didn't smile. Bond felt frustrated. He drank a lot of champagne and ordered another bottle. The scrambled eggs came and they ate in silence.
What I like is that how this scene reflects to me the opening paragraph of the entire book. Remember the amazing opening sentence of the book, but it also says that Bond was tired all of a sudden. He realized that he was staying too late. He should have quit earlier.
Yeah.
And then here again, it's like he realizes he should have quit earlier.
Yeah.
That late at night or early in the morning, you feel melancholy kicking in and you feel bitterness and regret.
He sat down and lit a cigarette. He felt flat. He suddenly realized that he was tired. The stuffiness of the room hit him, as it had hit him in the casino in the early hours of the previous day. He called for the bill and took a last mouthful of champagne. It tasted bitter, as the first glass too many always does. He would have liked to have seen Matisse's cheerful face and heard his news, perhaps even a word of congratulation.
Yeah, that wave of high is trailing off. He says somewhere he tastes his champagne and it's bitter. That's also a sign that it's the first glass that is too many.
Yeah,
too much.
Exactly. Yeah. So actually the note, not from Mati, we find out later, but it comes as some sort of revelation, or I think it's good to break the tension that there was, that something happened.
Yeah.
And
no awkward goodbye, saved by the bell.
So, as we now know, the note is a fake. Do you think that it was a trap designed to kidnap Vesper? Was she unaware of the scheme? I think so myself. I think probably she...
I think so as
no
well,
idea.
because she's tied up in the car. But yeah, it could have been a ruse. I don't know.
Maybe, yeah. Fleming describes the car as being a beetle-browed citron. I had to look this up. It means a sullen or unfriendly in appearance. So
yeah, it's
an
probably
ugly
one
car.
of the Citroens with the really big logo on the front.
Ah, right. Yeah.
Like the one in From Russia with Love.
And then Bond finds, like you said, he finds the handbag with the note, and it says, "Can you come out to the entrance hall for a moment? I have news for your companion, René Mati." Now that really reads like a silly note, something that Mati would never write. I mean, his first person of contact is Bond.
Yeah, and I wonder if the you here would be plural or singular. Was he trying? Were they trying to get Bond and Vesper out at the same time?
Both of them? And then they switched plans?
No, because you can read it either as, can the both of you come out at the entrance hall, or...
Yeah, that might have been their plan, but then they see only Vesper, so they change their plans and just take her and assume Bond will follow them.
Yeah.
We don't know, yeah. But I prefer this to whatever happened in the film, because here you can read Bond's thoughts.
Yeah.
And in the film, it's a bit vague. Why all of a sudden is Bond, or Daniel Craig playing Bond, doubting whatever happened to Mathis? And it's a bit ambiguous, inconsistent.
Yeah.
And it becomes very obscure when Le Chiffre in the film tells Bond that his friend Mathis is really his friend Mathis.
Yeah.
Really?
It's all bumbled up, yeah.
Anything else on chapter 14? La vie en rose, a beautiful life?
No, we get ready for a car chase.
Yeah, just very briefly, let me see if this is relevant. Some part of the analysis. Vesper's kidnapping is start of the second act of the whole story. Bond has by this point developed some sort of affection for her, though it's unclear whether it's romantic or purely sexual. That's a fair point.
Not really unclear.
No, to me it's purely sexual. Le Chiffre has tried to kill Bond twice now with no success. He must be mad with himself. But he found Bond's pressure point, beautiful women. And he's betting Bond's impulse to protect Vesper will overrule his instinct for self-preservation. And he's right. Bond has finished the job he was assigned to, but his moral compass will not allow him to go home until he saves Vesper.
I don't agree with this.
No, why not?
Because in the next chapter, we quite clearly Bond states, well, stupid women, they always bumble things up. I'll just chase her for a while, but if I can't catch her, then I'll just return back to my hotel and tell Matty that we had a row.
But why doesn't he?
Well,
he keeps on going.
Yeah,
for a long time.
He keeps on going for a while, but along the way he is like, well, I'll just let her die. I don't care. I'll figure a way.
Yeah, that's what he's thinking, but that's not what he's doing.
No, but he
I think he kind of hates himself that he keeps on driving and driving faster and faster. But
yeah, maybe
he could stop. He doesn't even have to go after her. He can just think, oh well, silly bitch.
Yeah, well, I'll just give it a try. But I don't really agree with this analysis.
Okay.
Because it's more like an impulse
like
to get in the car, and then he starts driving, and he starts to think about it and thinks it through, and he's like, might as well just turn around and head back to my hotel. Even if he even says something like, if they ask for some ransom money, we'll never pay it.
Yeah, that's true. That's what he says.
So
okay, fair point. It's nice, though, to get these other insights, even if you don't agree with them. I think it makes you think about the text a bit more. Yeah. Okay, chapter 15. Black hair and grey hound. Bond jumps in the Bentley. Thank goodness he drove it over at the beginning of chapter 10, right?
Yeah,
those 10 yards. Yeah. And Bond is off in pursuit. And soon he is out on the coast road, and he knows these territories well. He researched the environment thoroughly earlier that week. And he pushes the car to 80 miles per hour and then 90 miles per hour. I had to do some calculations again because in the Netherlands we use kilometers per hour. He's going 145 kilometers per hour. That's fast, man.
In a car like that? Yes.
Yeah, and those windy roads are treacherous. It's very fast. He knows the Citroen also took this road. And I like this because he heard its exhaust. That's quite impressive. And he sees little dust hanging on the bends. Well, Bond is a wonderful detective if you can see that, driving 90 miles per hour. I mean, so, like we just said, as he drove, Bond curses Vesper and M for having sent her on the job. Why the hell would they send me a woman for? This is exactly what he was afraid of.
This was just what he had been afraid of. These blithering women who thought they could do a man's work. Why the hell couldn't they stay at home and mind their pots and pans and stick to their frocks and gossip and leave men's work to the men? And now for this to happen to him, just when the job had come off so beautifully. For Vesper to fall for an old trick like that and get herself snatched and probably held to ransom like some bloody heroine in a strip cartoon. The silly bitch.
Now, do you think Bond is angry because he is upset or because he fears for her, or is he just angry because of her incompetence? What do you think?
I think he's also a bit angry with himself for first letting her come close enough to him to follow her in the first place, and probably also a bit mad with himself that he gets captured and he's in the car. He's also like, well, we were having champagne and having dinner and drinking and flirting and things like that, while Le Chiffre is scheming a plan to capture me.
Yeah.
It's a combination of the two. He's kind of blaming M and Vesper, but also I think there's also a lot of anger with himself here.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. And like you said, Bond assumes that Le Chiffre wants to swap the girl for the check of 40 million francs. And I like this. Bond is not going to play along. Forget it. He thinks she knew the risks when she entered the Secret Service. He's not even going to ask M. The job is more important than her. It's just too bad.
Exactly. There are a lot of nice girls with nice protuberances in front. Well, no problem finding another one.
She was a fine girl, but he wasn't going to fall for this childish trick. No dice. He would try and catch the Citroen and shoot it out with them, and if she got shot in the process, that was too bad too. He would have done his stuff, tried to rescue her before they got her off to some hideout. But if he didn't catch up with them, he would get back to his hotel and go to sleep and say no more about it.
But what do you think of Bond's character, though, then?
I think he's a professional, and I think there are occupations where you need a professional like this.
We do. Not a hero. I mean, this doesn't read like a hero.
Well, it does. Saving one woman and threatening an entire country. Sometimes the few have to suffer for the many.
Yeah, but James Bond is about no compromise. you don't get to choose. You want to do everything right.
True.
What if he already knew that she was bent?
Then he would probably set fire to her in a nightclub. I think in Casino Royale, he's that much of a bastard that he would probably just drown her in the sink or something.
Okay, so Bond keeps pushing his car faster and faster. He's going 120 miles per hour. That's 190 kilometers per hour. I don't even think my car can go that fast. That's incredible. And he knows he's gaining fast, and sure enough, when he douses his own lights, he can see a car about a mile or two ahead down the coast. I like this. Bond feels under the dashboard, and from a concealed holster, he takes out a long-barreled Colt Army Special .45, and he lays it ready on the seat beside him, nice and snug.
So he has 3 guns with him on this mission. He has the police positive, he has the Beretta, and he has the Colt Army Special. Wow.
Oh, don't you just love it? Yeah.
The man is well armed for the job.
Yeah, he is, yeah. He's planning to shoot at the tires or the petrol tank. What if he blows up the car? Well, it doesn't matter, probably.
No.
I like this. Bond feels calm and at ease. Vesper's life is no problem any longer.
Nope.
His face is grim but serene. Is he really that cold-blooded? Probably.
Yeah, but on the other hand, he is still following them. If he is that cold-blooded, he could just turn around and get back to dad.
And then in the middle of this chapter, we change perspective. All of a sudden, we switch to the villains inside the car. I like this change. It shows you that the author doesn't just follow Bond, but he knows everything that's going on. And you can also see from the villain's perspective what they're thinking. Now, the Chiffre is driving, and he's being described as this big, fluid body flung forwards. And next to him is one of the gunmen with a hand on a lever, whatever that's supposed to be. We'll find out. And in the back of the car is the other gunman sitting next to Vesper. And this is creepy. He's caressing her naked thigh. Ugh. She's wrapped up like a present. Her long black velvet skirt had been lifted over her arms and her head and tied above her head with a piece of rope. That looks very silly to me.
Yeah, so she looks like a garbage bag.
Yeah, something like that, with naked legs.
With legs sticking out from under there.
Yeah, being caressed by a creepy gunman. Ugh. Now, Le Chiffre is both concentrating on the road ahead and on the oncoming Bentley behind him. This is something that is really, it adds to the tension. He knows Bond is coming for him. He has a plan. He's decreasing his speed. He's going from 80 miles per hour to 60 miles per hour. That's still nearly 100 kilometers per hour, though. But he keeps slowing down and telling the gunman next to him to pay attention. So when you read this, it's like, no, how's this going to go? What's going to happen? This is awful. And for the very first time, he actually says audible words.
Yeah.
He's giving instructions to the gunman next to him. He's still decreasing speed, and at a crossroads, he gives a signal, and the gunman pulls the lever. And from the boot at the back of the car, there falls out something that resembles a chain, but we don't know what exactly. And then Bond's car is entering the bend, and Le Chiffre douses his lights and quickly parks the Citroën down the narrow side road, and the men get out, and they arm themselves with revolvers and a grenade, and the Bentley screams down towards them like an express train. And then the chapter stops again.
Okay, let's end it here.
Yeah. But what's going to happen? The bad guys can't win. Why doesn't Bond anticipate this maneuver? This is horrible.
Why doesn't Bond just slowly drive to Le Chiffre's villa?
Probably knows that's where he's headed.
Yeah, that's true.
He's not careful. He's completely taken by surprise. But it's excellent writing. Very fast-paced, very visual. You just keep on moving. You have any other remarks about the chapter?
Yeah, we learn in the second chapter, we learn that Le Chiffre is an excellent driver of fast cars, right?
Yeah.
So that comes back here, and I like that little foreshadowing in the second chapter.
Yeah, he knows exactly what he's doing. Yeah. He's capable. Yeah, I like that. Now, the website analysis, it also explains, it suspects that Le Chiffre's Citroën is most likely a traction Avant, a bulky vehicle that sits low to the ground.
Martin, where are you when we need you?
Yeah. But yeah, that's it wasn't known for its speed, but Le Chiffre doesn't need a fast car. He's not trying to get away. He's trying to lure Bond in. It's nice to try and look up what the cars would have probably been like. We don't get that description by Fleming. The website also describes Bond's 31 4.5-liter blower Bentley, which is incredibly fast, faster than my car now. But the website writes, I like this, like Bond, this particular Bentley is very rare. Only 55 were made in 3 years' time. And Bond's obsession with it is a mark of his extravagant taste and his desire for the very best things in life. I think this is amusing. Fleming was a car lover himself. I can imagine Fleming really putting serious thought into what he would choose for the cars for his characters. I mean, he can think of anything, but he decided to use these two cars.
Yeah, but if you see how much time and effort he puts into describing a gambling table,
Yeah.
I'm not surprised that he took some time on picking out the perfect car for Bond.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that it's an old car.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
is.
not a modern car or anything. It's
Sometimes the old ways are the best ways.
True. Yes. Are you ready for chapter 16, the crawling of the skin?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Okay, so the chain that came from the bonnet of the car is actually a strip of spikes on the road ahead of Bond. And Bond's tires burst and he skids off the road, crashing into the bank. Le Chiffre's men pull Bond from the wreck and he's unconscious, so they tie him up and they throw him in the car with Vesper. Eventually, Bond wakes up, he sees Vesper tied up, and he's afraid that she might have died, but suddenly she stirs slightly. He calls out to her, but he's quickly silenced by one of Le Chiffre's goons. And Bond is dismayed by the amount of professionalism of Le Chiffre's men. The accuracy and the lack of effort with which Bond was just punched shows him that he is dealing with men who know what they're doing. It kind of takes all the life out of him. He's like, oh my god, if I'm up against this, I'm already tied down. Vesper's tied down as well. This is going to be a tough nut to crack. And I like that you really feel the life drain out of him.
Yeah.
By the way, he's punched first in the stomach, I believe, and then on the back of the head.
He felt thoroughly dispirited and weak in resolve as well as in his body. He had had to take too much in the past 24 hours, and now this last stroke by the enemy seemed almost too final. This time there could be no miracles. No one knew where he was, and no one would miss him until well on into the morning. The wreck of his car would be found before very long, but it would take hours to trace the ownership to him.
And Bond is also very pissed off with himself. Drinking champagne in a nightclub while the enemy was thinking of a plan to get back at him, and he curses himself for his nonchalance. He realizes that the abduction of Vesper was just a ploy to get to him, also like that, and he fell for it, and he can only blame himself. So not only didn't he get to sleep with Vesper, he's also in a predicament because of it. So after a short drive, they arrive at Le Chiffre's villa, Le Noctambule, and Bond is being dragged into the house. He realizes that it will take several hours before his absence from the hotel will be noticed by anyone, and that until that time Le Chiffre is free to do whatever he wants to him. Along the way, he didn't see any houses. There are only a few farms in the vicinity, and he knows for sure that until next morning he won't be missed. So he's left to his own devices. But of course, Bond wouldn't be Bond if he would give up without a fight. And with his hands still tied, he kicks out and hits one of the guards in the shin, immediately tries to kick another guard, but this one is too quick for him. He catches Bond's foot in midair, twists it sharply, and before he knows it, he's lying on the ground, helpless and alone, waiting to see what will happen next.
You can just feel the hopelessness.
Yeah, exactly. It really, there's not much hope left for him, and well, we know what's...
And he knows it.
Yeah, and we know what's going to happen, and it takes quite a beating before things start to look up for him.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, Le Chiffre speaks to Bond.
Yeah.
And for the first time, we really get a description of what he sounds like. Low, soft, unhurried, and like a doctor summoning the next patient from the waiting room.
Yeah.
Bond turned his head to the right. Le Chiffre had moved a few feet out into the passage. He lifted his finger and crooked it again. Then, for the first time, he spoke. "Come, my dear friend. We are wasting our time." He spoke in English with no accent. His voice was low and soft and unhurried. He showed no emotion. He might have been a doctor summoning the next patient from the waiting room, a hysterical patient who had been expostulating feebly with a nurse. Bond again felt puny and impotent. Nobody but an expert in jiu-jitsu could have handled him with the Corsican's economy and lack of fuss. The cold precision with which the thin man had paid him back in his own coin had been equally unhurried, even artistic. Almost docilely, Bond walked back down the passage. He had nothing but a few more bruises to show for his clumsy gesture of resistance to these people. As he preceded the thin man over the threshold, he knew that he was utterly and absolutely in their power.
And again we get a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Going into the next chapter, Bond appears to be completely broken, completely in the power of Le Chiffre and his men. And yeah, this might be the darkest moment in all Bond novels.
I like what you said, that we now know already what's going to happen, but reading this for the first time, you kind of don't want to know what's going to happen. It's kind of like, oh my God, what are they going to do with him? This is the most fearful situation you could be in, especially because there is no plan.
No, and all hope is lost.
Yeah.
Really, all hope is lost. Yeah. Yeah, so it might be the darkest moment for Bond in the entire book series.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of another moment, but usually he's never this alone.
Yeah. So it's about 5 a.m. when they arrive at Le Chiffre's villa. So he must be knackered. I mean, he spent the entire night playing in the casino.
Drank a bottle of champagne, a couple of Vespers.
Drank lots and lots of alcohol.
Yeah.
Had a very awful car chase. And now he's captured. No sleep. Oh man, this is tough.
Yeah,
It's
but
really
it gets
tough.
worse.
My dear boy. Chapter 17.
Yes.
This is by far the longest chapter of the ones that we're going through this part of the book review. Bond is sitting in a large, bare room, and it's dirty, lots of stains, filthy. There are two chairs, a throne-like chair and a round cane chair. And Bond is being placed on a round cane chair. And Le Chiffre tells his men to prepare everything, and he leaves the room. I like that. I'm going to assume everything will be all right. I'm going to leave you now, Mr. Bond.
I'm going to get a cup of coffee. And...
Yeah. So the thin man, he cuts out the seat of the cane chair, and then Bond has to strip until he's completely naked. And briefly, Bond tries to make a move, but it's immediately countered by the thin man. He's a true professional. And then Le Chiffre comes back into the room, like you said, carrying a pot of coffee and a 3-foot-long carpet beater. That's almost a meter long. And he has a carving knife. And he pours himself some coffee, and he takes place in the throne-like chair. And then Le Chiffre places the cane chair, without the seat, just the framing, exactly opposite him.
Bond stood stark naked in the middle of the room, bruises showing livid on his white body, his face a grey mask of exhaustion and knowledge of what was to come. "Sit down there." Le Chiffre nodded at the chair in front of him. Bond walked over and sat down. The thin man produced some flex. With this he bound Bond's wrists to the arms of the chair and his ankles to the front legs. He passed a double strand across his chest, under the armpits, and through the chair back. He made no mistakes with the knots, and left no play in any of the bindings. All of them bit sharply into Bond's flesh. The legs of the chair were broadly spaced, and Bond could not even rock it. He was utterly a prisoner, naked and defenseless.
So, what is going on here? I feel very uncomfortable reading this stuff. I mean, Bond is sitting naked in front of Le Chiffre. His balls and his penis are just hanging through the empty seat. Fleming calls it the under part of his body, which is kind of a nice way of putting it. But then Le Chiffre sends his henchman out of the room, and Le Chiffre is just sitting there comfortably, drinking some coffee, resting the handle of the cane carpet beater on his knee. The flat base is on the ground, directly beneath Bond's under parts. And then Le Chiffre just looks at Bond. Doesn't say anything, he just looks. And then all of a sudden, he springs his wrists upwards on his knee, and the carpet beater beats Bond's balls, and Bond goes into spasms and silent screams. Oh man, Fleming describes quite vividly what happens to the human body. He starts sweating and everything. Le Chiffre just wanted to make clear that Bond understands his position, and Le Chiffre starts monologuing. This is typical of the Bond franchise now, isn't it? I'm going to explain to you my entire plan. He tells Bond the game is over, he's in way over his head, he stumbled into a game for grown-ups, he's calling Bond my dear boy and my dear fellow. And then suddenly, very sharp, "Where's the money?" And he starts hitting Bond again, but he's not saying anything. So Le Chiffre starts monologuing again. Now, how does this make you feel, Tyler?
I'm Yeah, this is
just
terrible.
madness, isn't it?
Yeah, this is one of the worst scenes, and worst scenes in a good way. It's one of the most tense and gruesome scenes in the entire series. It's maybe the ear piercing with a skewer in Colonel's son might be comparable to this, but Bond is never being tortured like this again, I think.
They made it a bit comical in the film.
Yeah, exactly. I wrote that down as well. No jokes, no glib remarks, no. This is just brutal.
Sheer torture.
Brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how does it make me feel? Well, let's try not to think about it. I don't know. I also think that somewhere along the way, Fleming not only describes what it does to the human body, but also what it does to the human mind.
Yeah.
Knowing that you'll probably never
be a man again.
Yeah, never work the same way again. So yeah, no, I always wondered what, before the first time Bond gets hit with the carpet beater, what Bond was thinking. Because he knows that something is about to happen, but that moment of anticipation might even be worse than the torture itself.
Yeah, probably. But this is not even the worst of it yet. It gets worse even. The beating gets more intense. He's just warming up.
Yeah, it sounds like he's done this quite a number of times, right? It's not like the first time Le Chiffre has been doing this.
But Fleming also describes it as a workout for Le Chiffre. It's hard work for him beating up Bond's balls.
Yeah.
But
want to trade places for a while?
Yeah. I don't know. What's wrong with Fleming? He always tortures Bond. It's the same in Moonraker.
Yeah, Bond always ends up in hospital. I mean, in the movies they decided that he would end up on a boat with a nice girl, and in the
I like that.
In the novels he usually is completely knackered and ends up in a hospital. But to each his own.
Okay, part of an analysis again. This might be reading too much into it, but it's something that Fleming writes about quite often in his books. So what you said about Le Chiffre not only attacking his body but also his mind, this is quite true. And then it says on the website, his remarks about playing childhood games of Red Indians are designed to make Bond feel like a small boy caught messing around in grown-ups' businesses. That's true, really. I mean, we don't use that phrase, do we? Red Indians. It might refer to cowboys and Indians, or
probably
the Peter Pan image of the Indians. But the image of the Red Indians appealed to Fleming, who even referred to his World War II intelligence unit by that name. That's quite nice. So when Le Chiffre is referring to Bond in childlike terms, he is patronizing and insulting the egotistical spy who generally thinks he's the smartest and most skilled person in the room. And it works. Bond returns to his phrase about playing Red Indians later when he's talking to Mati, when he's questioning his agency's tactics of subversive warfare and his own career choices. He's really doubting his place in the world. So again, this might be reading too much into it, but I like the explanation behind these terms that we don't use ourselves, or that might be old-fashioned, like Red Indians. You come across that term frequently in the Fleming books.
Yeah, and it's also the same method that Rosa Klepp uses when torturing. She breaks down the prisoner, and then she turns into
she mothers them.
Yeah, exactly. She turns into a sort of a mother, and you tell mommy what she wants to know, and the beating will stop. And it's kind of the same thing that Le Chiffre is doing here.
Yeah.
Right, breaking down the adult and getting into his child state's mind.
I wonder if that is an effective torturing method.
Let's not try to find out.
Let's not find out. No. Something else I find fascinating that Fleming often does, maybe even in each of his stories, but is this sentence. This is not a romantic adventure story in which the villain is finally routed and the hero is giving a medal and marries the girl. Unfortunately, these things don't happen in real life. I love it that he writes that in a fictional story, because by doing that, he places his story in the real world, which is stylistically quite interesting, I think, and obviously not true.
No, and it's also a bit of I think it's also a bit tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah.
You might think that you know what is going to happen, but don't worry. It's not that kind of...
But exactly that is going to happen, but you don't know that yet. But to you, does it take you out of the book?
No, not at all. Not at all.
No? it adds a bit of flavor to it, and he uses that meta style quite often in his stories. I like that.
You probably saw Kingsman, the first Kingsman movie.
Yeah.
There's a scene like that as well when they are outside the church. And he's like, well, this is probably the moment where I will explain all my plans and you find an elaborate way to escape. Well, it's not that kind of movie. Bang.
Yeah.
It feels a bit the same, but
it's the same. It's the same thing.
In Kingsman, it really takes you out the movie, and it's played for laughs.
Yeah.
But in this case, no, it doesn't. It doesn't bother me at all. No.
Yeah. Good. So Le Chiffre threatens to kill both him and Vesper unless he gives him the money, and Bond remains silent, and he prepares for the pain. He knows the beginning is the worst. Please let it come quickly. Bond is accepting his own death, and Bond gets a very severe beating this time. And then, this is the part where Le Chiffre explains that they went through his hotel room, but they didn't find anything. How does he know I hit the check there, Bond wonders. This is nice. This is a nice little insight. The entire room was ransacked, but nothing was found. And then Bond visualized how at the same time the gunmen are probably raping Vesper.
Should have been me.
Why?
No. That was just Bond thinking how it should have ended.
Then Le Chiffre talks some more and explains how the torture is a terrible thing. But really, though, he seems to love it. I mean, the guy is a bastard, yeah. He explains to us that there's no need to indulge in refinements, just beat a man's balls. That's all you have to do.
Yeah.
It's not just the immediate agony, Fleming writes, but also the thought that your manhood is being gradually destroyed, and that at the end, if you will not yield, you will no longer be a man.
Yeah, I feel that this is more for us as a reader. If we haven't made that link yet, then we can do so now, than for Bond.
Yeah, it's quite explicit, yeah.
Yeah, I think he's just explaining it for us, the reader. Like, not only am I causing him an amount of pain that he's never imagined, but also in his mind, this is probably going on right now.
So finally, with a croaky voice, Bond asks for a drink. And Le Chiffre gives him some coffee. He pulls his head back. That's just awful, right? Imagine that. Just your head being pulled back and then hot coffee being poured into you. Bond is just stalling for time. He's telling Le Chiffre the money won't be any good to him, that the police would probably trace it to him. And also, but only a little, he's exaggerating the extent of his physical collapse. I like that. He's still playing. There's some hope somewhere.
Yeah.
But unfortunately for Bond, Le Chiffre has an entire plan to explain how he would have gotten the money from Bond simply by playing one last game of chance in the casino. And Le Chiffre seems really anxious to continue the beating.
Yeah, and is this where it's stated that there's also already a puddle of blood forming underneath the chair?
Yeah, that's pretty much how the chapter ends.
Okay, yeah, that's so vivid.
Bond wants to get over with it. He's given up. He thinks it's about 7 a.m. in the morning. Maybe a mati, maybe lighter. They might be on time to catch up with Le Chiffre later, but he knows that he's gone. He lifts up his head, he looks Le Chiffre in the eyes, that horrible face, and he tells him to fuck off.
Like you do.
Now, yeah, like you do. And I like it that Fleming, he doesn't write that out. He just writes a line. But we all know what he means. So then Le Chiffre gives him his worst beating yet.
Yeah.
With savage fury, snarling like a wild beast. And then after 10 minutes, can you imagine 10 minutes of that? Bond faints blessedly.
Yeah, and I love this because Le Chiffre, he started off as a quiet and soft-spoken guy, and he totally loses it. He can't break Bond, and he goes berserko on him.
Yeah, doesn't help though.
It doesn't help, but his tactic of slowly getting it out of him doesn't work, and he just loses it.
Yeah.
We see that in other novels of Fleming as well, where Bond is really pushing the right buttons and really gets the villain to lose his mind.
Yeah, he's good that way. Yeah. I like those bits in the films as well, always, when he's pushing the buttons of the villains.
Yeah.
And Tomorrow Never Dies, I Would Be Adrift. What else do you have? Goldfinger, all those famous examples. I like those moments.
Yeah, and I believe we said it the last time during our podcast that Le Chiffre really is like a mold for all the other villains that are yet to come.
But I think maybe even Drax more so. There are many Drax-like villains.
True. Yeah. But to me, Drax and Le Chiffre are quite alike, especially physically.
Yeah. That's true. we'll get to Moonraker quite soon.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, so.
Probably my favorite Fleming novel.
Blood is everywhere. Let's listen to part of the book.
Le Chiffre seized Bond's ears and harshly twisted them. Then he leant forward and slapped his cheeks hard several times. Bond's head rolled from side to side with each blow. Slowly his breathing became deeper. An animal groan came from his lolling mouth. Le Chiffre took a glass of coffee and poured some into Bond's mouth and threw the rest in his face. Bond's eyes slowly opened. Le Chiffre returned to his chair and waited. He lit a cigarette and contemplated the spattered pool of blood on the floor beneath the inert body opposite. Bond groaned again pitifully. It was an inhuman sound. His eyes opened and he gazed dully at his torturer.
So Bond wakes up, sort of. Now imagine in 1953, if you read this book, it's the only Bond book, there's no sequel. You don't know how it will end. You don't know James Bond always wins. What would have been like? I mean, Bond is finished, but you're only about 2/3 of the book. So what's going to happen?
You know something is going to happen. So I think this would be the moment to really think, like, how on earth is he going to get out of it? I think you probably assume that Mathis or Leiter will come and save the day. I certainly didn't think the first time that it would be
the way it is.
Yeah, the way it is, that the Soviet would come in and save the day. But
so we're almost there.
Yeah.
So this chapter ends with Le Chiffre about to cut something off. He says, "Say goodbye to it, Bond." Now, I always assumed he was going to cut off his penis, but there's another analysis on this. I don't know what you think. But on the website it says, Le Chiffre has done his homework. He knows Bond prides himself on his masculinity, which is inextricably entwined with his enjoyment of sex. These are hard words for me to read. To lose one would result in the loss of the other. If Le Chiffre has his way, Bond will no longer be a man. That's the very worst thing that could happen to Bond, who defines himself by his masculinity. That is the it to which Le Chiffre tells him to say goodbye. Is it that, or is it just his penis?
I think just hook, line, and sinker. His entire wedding tackle.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Doesn't really matter, though. It's bad. The final chapter of today's episode.
Yeah, here we go. Bond does survive this, so let's get on with it then. Chapter 18, A Crack-like Face. So, when things are looking at its bleakest, all of a sudden a third man appears in the room, and he tells Le Chiffre to stop.
Drop it.
Yeah, and he tells him to drop the knife that Le Chiffre is holding. And all of a sudden, Le Chiffre's quiet composure is gone in an instant. Well, he already lost it when he was beating Bond, but the blood drains from his face. He can't say anything except a high-pitched eek. And I always read it like this, that the third man in the room speaks for him and says smirsh, like that's the only word that's needed. And I don't know how you feel about this. I always wondered whether it's Le Chiffre who says that as sort of an explanation, or the man who's in
the word smirsh, you mean?
Yeah.
I think that's the assassin. He says smirsh. And Le Chiffre then wants to make excuses for himself.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, exactly. Le Chiffre tries to explain and he tries to save what is left, but the gunman stops him. You are a fool, a thief, and a traitor. The gunman was sent by the Soviet Union to kill him, and he even tells Le Chiffre that he is lucky that he only has time to shoot him, because if he had some more time on his hands, he would have killed him slowly and very painfully. Note to self, do not piss off Smirsh. He asks Le Chiffre if he pleads guilty.
Do you plead guilty? Bond wrestled with his consciousness. He screwed up his eyes and tried to shake his head to clear it, but his whole nervous system was numbed, and no message was transmitted to his muscles. He could just keep his focus on the great pale face in front of him, and on its bulging eyes. A thin string of saliva crept from the open mouth and hung down from the chin. "Yes," said the mouth. There was a sharp phut, no louder than a bubble of air escaping from a tube of toothpaste. No other noise at all, and suddenly Le Chiffre had grown another eye, a third eye on a level with the other two, right where the thick nose started to jut out below the forehead. It was a small black eye, without eyelashes or eyebrows.
I like it that Bond can't see what's happening.
No, exactly. And he's trying to turn his head far enough so that he can see what is happening. And he's really curious. But the scene plays out with Bond looking at Le Chiffre and looking at Le Chiffre's reactions to the guy who's behind him. Yeah, I really like the way that's done. So in the end, the Soviets save the day, or at least save Bond.
It's a bit of a deus ex machina, right? At the last moment.
It is a bit. On the other hand, we knew that Smurfs were on his way to kill him.
Yeah.
So
it was already assumed in chapter 2, I think.
So they really caught up with him just at the right moment.
Exactly. That's pretty convenient.
Yeah.
So,
but I do like it that in the end, Bond isn't saved by one of his allies. So it's not Leiter who comes to the rescue. It's not Matee, like you said during one of those analyses. He really is on his own.
Yeah.
He's saved in the first instance by a tree trunk, the second instance by the fact that he flips his chair, and now by a Russian of all people.
With a crag-like face.
With a crag-like
face.
That is?
Yes. What is that? What is a crag? I had no idea.
No, I didn't look it up either.
No, but I had to look it up. It has two descriptions, really. A steep or rugged cliff or rock face.
Okay.
Synonyms are cliff, bluff, ridge, precipice, rock face, overhang. So it's stony, I think. And it's also a geology term, a shelly sandstone occurring in eastern England. Now that's strangely specific.
rugged, brutal face. Something like that.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
But Bond only gets the impression of a crag-like face because the guy is wearing a mask, wearing a hat, and he can only see the eyes, really.
Exactly. The assassin turns his attention to Bond, and Bond looks into his eyes, the only thing that are visible behind his black mask. Because the assassin had no orders to kill Bond, he will let him live.
That's really stupid, right? That's really stupid.
Yeah, kinda.
Don't really like that.
However, the Russians or the Soviets assassins are probably they really listen to the orders they get and don't do anything more. If you look at what the Bulgars did by not obeying their orders, they blew themselves up. So
yeah, that didn't go too well for them. Yeah.
No, exactly. So probably the smart thing to do. However, he does carve an inverted M into Bond's right hand.
Yeah.
The Russian letter sh for spionam. Because
and Bond faints,
Yeah, Bond faints, drifts back into unconsciousness, and that's how we leave him for today. Battered, bruised, but still alive.
Yeah. I like how Fleming describes two pools of blood reflecting patches of pink light on the wall. And as the bright, beautiful June day progresses, these pink patches of light march slowly along the wall and grow larger. I mean, it's a beautiful day out there. That's in direct contrast with all the dark and horrible things that happened inside the villa. And then that image of all the blood, and it's just horrible.
Yeah.
It's so intense. Oh, I like it.
In a strange way, I like it. Yes.
Yeah. But it does something to you. It gets your heart beating. It gets your senses flowing. It connects to me in a way I can't really describe or explain.
I wanted to pose this question to you the last time as well. If not for the movies, do you think that these books would be read at all?
Now?
Yeah, nowadays.
Do you consider them to be well written?
Yeah, is the quality so good that it would be a classic on its own right? Or do you think that the movies really elevated?
That's a very difficult what if. I am not a connoisseur of literature, so I don't know. I won't recognize great literature.
I'd be hard-pressed to call this literature.
But it's a well-written story, and it's a genre that I absolutely love.
But you also love things like John le Carré and Grisham and lots.
But that's different. No, I don't really like Grisham. But
Grisham might not be the best example. I'm looking at my bookshelf to see if I can...
I can really appreciate John le Carré, but I enjoy Fleming more.
Okay.
But I have to admit that probably these books wouldn't be as noticeable as they are if it weren't for the films.
I mean, did you read any of the Saint books or Havank or things like that?
No.
Which came out during the same time?
No, I haven't. No. Maybe I will. I don't know.
How about the Bourne books?
I like the films, but I heard that the books are quite tough to get through. I haven't tried them. Have you?
I'm halfway through the first audiobook that I bought about 3 or 4 years ago. But the narrator is terrible, so I can't really get through it.
Well, maybe that's it. I mean, this is easily understandable. It has lush descriptions anyway, so it gives me the idea that it's well written, even maybe if it isn't. But it's also quite direct, fast-paced, easy enough to follow, easy enough to visualize. I like it. Yeah, it's very accessible.
Yeah, I like it as well, but it's not the kind of book that I would usually read several times over if it hadn't been for the Bond movies. I'm quite sure of that.
Why?
Because I'm not really a thriller reader to start off with. And, well, there are some movies that I've watched several times, but not comparable to the amount of times that I've watched the Bond movies, for instance. So I think it's a bit in for a penny, in for a pound. So I'll read them several times, and I love the books, but I don't think they're the high point of literature or anything like that. I mean, I can think of thousands of books that I would preferably read more than once.
Rather read. I always find that if I'm reading something, I want to enjoy it. I don't want to struggle with it. I mean, I'm done with school.
True.
True. I just want to relax, and I like going through the book so thoroughly. You know, it's so strange because we're going to end our second part of the book review right here. It's a very extremely intense middle piece, but we still have 1/3 of the book left, even though the story seems to be over.
Yeah.
So in a way, it's also a surprising book. You know, we know what's going to happen next, but yeah.
Yeah, but you had to climax right here.
Yeah.
And it's the reason that they put...
But you have a twist at the end as well.
Yeah, of course, but it's the reason that they put in the sinking house scene in Venice in the movie.
As an extra climax, yeah.
To have something to end up on with a big bang.
What about the book, though? If you just look at the book, this second part, do you like it better than the first part? If you compare this to what we did last week?
Wow, difficult question.
Because last week it was a lot of exposition, a lot of laying the groundwork, introducing us to the characters. It was a lot of interaction, a lot of dialogue, a lot of scenery. And this was just action, action, action. Even the card game was action.
I really think the second part can't exist without the first part.
Mm-hmm.
If you would have been thrown into the second part without any foreshadowing or knowledge beforehand, then it wouldn't read as well as it does now.
Okay.
I can't really say what I like better. I think it's the 3 parts that we will be discussing are
one book. Yeah.
Necessary. Yeah, are one book, and the first part is necessary for the last part, and so I can't really say what I like better.
If you would plot the story on a graph with intensity, you would get like a line that stays low at the beginning, and then all of a sudden you have it going steep, and then
get a bell curve.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Okay. Are we going to end the second part of our book review here?
Yeah, let's do so.
So next week we will be back to go through the final 9 chapters. What we'll also do is that we'll have a look at how the book was published and received back in 1953. We'll give you some more in-depth analyses and our thoughts. And if any listeners wants to join us, you can obviously read through the remaining chapters yourselves. And as ever, we'd love to hear from you, your thoughts or questions. And then finally, to round off, please come and follow us on social media. Search for the 00 Files. Subscribe to our podcast in your favorite app, or contact us at moneypenny@the00files.com. Or visit our website at www.the00files.com, where you can find in-depth articles, location videos, and more 00 fun. Thank you very much for listening, and the 00 Files will return.